So as Steve says, I've spent more than 20 years in the industry, in common with, I guess, quite a few people in this room. And I've worked with Stephen in some of my OEM background. I started early on working in software development in Tier 1s. So I've lived some of what I've got on this slide, which is, today we see the OEMs forming software factories, which is a bit of software-defined vehicle I want to talk a little bit about, and they're bringing more software development in-house. So this is sort of vertical integration, but it's not the first time the automotive industry has done this. In fact, right back in the early days, Henry Ford wanted to fully vertically integrate, even went as far as having his own rubber plantations, Fordlandia. Some interesting films about that. But through the 20th century, the OEMs have traditionally gone back to trying to use Tier 1s when they want sort of to save money. They want to take advantage of economies of scale. And then they've bought stuff back in-house when there's new technology or they see a competitive advantage by developing technology. And the large Tier 1s do some of these same changes as well to get their own economies of scale. So this brings us through to where we are today with, let's say, more integration, more of the OEMs bringing software development in-house. And that brings us to terms like OEM.OS. So a bit of terminology, VW.OS, VolvoCars.OS, there are many examples. And this isn't usually truly an operating system. It is made up of somewhat representing the 160 maybe ECUs Stephen talked about, but the electrical architecture of the vehicle, of which the most complex, the sort of centralized ECUs, as zonal ECUs, sometimes functional domain controllers, might have a software architecture that looks a bit like that. That's probably a more extreme example. But what it represents is we've got some classic AUTOSAR doing some functional safety real-time functions, and we've got some more compute-capable software running on different silicon. So we've got heterogeneous silicon, heterogeneous software, which is more complicated to develop. This vertical integration, this more complex software development requires skills, requires a lot of investment by the OEMs, and it only really works with horizontal collaboration. I mentioned AUTOSAR still there. For anybody who's not looked recently, AUTOSAR over the last few years in the latest standards has spent a lot of time working with these and other standards bodies, some of the new ones to do with software-defined vehicle and some of the more established, IEEE, etc., ASAM, to really support what's going on with these more complex heterogeneous software stacks. They work together, and that companies like us, tool vendors and AUTOSAR vendors, can actually work in this environment. We've got standards to work with. So, oops, I've gone too far. So I wanted to put a sort of representation of the kind of software development flow. I could have picked many, many different versions that talk about the validation at every stage, that talk about the continuous integration, continuous deployment. But I wanted to pick something that talks about the sort of traditional skills we have in automotive and shows a bit again of the collaboration. So this example doesn't have all Siemens tools. We've got a collaboration with IBM and Rhapsody for bringing SysML into that. And the reason I bring that up, that's part of our roadmap to SysML v2. We're big believers in model-based development. I'm sort of echoing the previous speakers who talked about using models, real models that allow you to test and validate at every stage of development. They allow you to model the behavior, they allow you to check the behavior, and they allow you to automate functions, which saves the number of those hard-to-find skills you need to do the development. So my main message here is that there's vertical integration, there's software factories, but it only really works with horizontal collaboration with the various members of the community and the tool vendors, the Tier 1s, the OEMs, silicon vendors, all working together to make sure we've got standards that allow everybody to communicate. Thank you. So I'll hand over to...
Absolutely.